IHMS.
IHMS Commentary: A Day of Action to Prevent Gun Violence. Written by Professor Abdi Khalil, narrated by Nasab Abdi. Not only the high-profile mass shootings in public arenas, worship places, and schools work to prevent, but also the daily gun violence that claims more young lives in marginalized neighbors in the cities. In fact, both gangs and irresponsible police officers do contribute to significant killings in the inner cities. According to Canada's Government Statistics Agency, gun violence overall rose by more than 40% in Canada between 2013 and 2017, with much of that increase driven by incidents in Toronto. According to police statistics, by the end of 2019, more than 760 people had been shot in the city, 44 of whom were killed and were mostly racial young persons. On Tuesday, October 20, 2020, with courage and humanity-filled actions, Mothers of Peace Group, in collaboration with various community-based groups, a virtual meeting was held in tackling issues related to gun violence in Toronto. Under a theme, A Day of Action to Prevent Gun Violence, various community leaders, Toronto police representative, lawyers, activists, politicians, parents, as well as close to 200 concerned citizens participated in the discussion, looking for mutual understanding and seeking for possible solutions to eradicate gun violence that usually affects lives of many young souls in vulnerable communities in Toronto. The meeting was facilitated by Mothers of Peace Group. Many parents came out and boldly shared their tragic stories, physical and mental devastations, loss of their young children in the hands of assorted perpetrators, including the police. With tangible evidence, some mothers pointed out that their sons were murdered because of systemic racism, xenophobia, and institutionalized discriminations.
Everyone, thank you for joining us. Even though it's hard to come together because of the Day of Action, we've been going a lot of trauma, and we have moms who lost their son on the event, and also we have the young person who are survived from the gun violence. And I just want to say welcome everyone for joining us. We have moms also lost their son from the gun violence. We have Manhal from Regent Park. We have other shepherds from East Side, Angela Thomas as well from West. These moms who are courage, and I see and I hear and listen to their stories. You will have a chance to listen and hear their stories as well, and this is why we do what we do as well.
Hello, my name is Audette Shepherd, and my only child, Justin, was murdered at the age of 19 in the city of Toronto. Justin's murder has never been solved. That child was the best thing that ever happened to me. He was my breath, he was my everything. And when Justin died, when he was murdered, it just, the best part of me was gone and has never been the same. I have learned that grief is not an event, it's a journey. And it's a very tough journey. So when you ask what effect it had on my life, I have no words. I really have no words. And it also had a ripple effect, not only on the rest of my family, but also on an entire community. So when I think about changes, what needs to be changed in this city, I believe it's multifaceted. There's so much to be changed because our village is broken and it has very devastating results subsequently. So how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So if you ask me for one thing that I would like to see changed, I would like to see more efforts and focus on prevention, because we have made exponential advances in technology. So I believe that it's important that the government and law enforcement utilize technology and be more proactive in preventing violence before it happens. It seems like the criminals are always one step ahead, and the police and law enforcement are just playing catch up all the time. So it's important for us to prevent things before it happens, because if they eventually caught the perpetrators, it's too late. Somebody's child is already dead if they ever get caught. And so that's my one change that I would think would be so important. There's too much blood crying out from the ground, crying out for justice that never comes, because justice delayed is justice denied. Thank you so much for your time.
Along with mothers, many college and university students also expressed their fears, distrust, police harassments, and hassles that have affected their educational performances and mental health. Many participants also deeply expressed that their families and many communities are hit by tsunamis of unmanageable trauma. Indeed, all the stories were heartbreaking and painful. Among these, a mother shared a strikingly manifestation of institutional discrimination, how the case of her juvenile son was unjustly handled by the judiciary. Her son was not charged at the time of the incidents. Rather, his case was deliberately postponed until he reached 18 years of age, and then convicted for a maximum possible sentence. Beyond reasonable doubt, this kind of painful story happened to prove the existence of racial profiling and abuse of laws within legal institutions.
Hi, my name is Angela. I lost my son this year to gun violence. Some may say, well, maybe he was involved and maybe whatever, it doesn't matter. The point of the matter is he got marginalized since he was in school. Teachers trying to change his curriculum, trying to not give him the time of day when he was taught at home, knew his work, knew everything. Everything was a waste of time. Even I remember him telling me as in his later teens, he says, I tell the truth and they still throw the book at me. And that's when I think he still couldn't accept and believe the fact that he was that there is such a word as racism. I recall that poverty can also be a really, really bad thing, because had we had the money to afford a proper lawyer, he would have never been in the system, he would have never been charged, he would have never been left to experience the things he experienced. However, imagine keeping your child for almost 2 years so that they can charge him as an adult. Every time I heard about money, funding, programming, I made sure I called and I told him, ask your worker for this, ask your worker for that, but he would never get it. The bottom line is I left a very promising Bay Street job, medical background, to get into social work because I saw not just my son, but other Black and minority kids, and not immigrants, kids that were born right here, being not given the opportunity that others were being given. As far as I'm concerned, there was a lot of institutionalized racism and things like that. Every time I would ask him, are they giving you training? Are they doing this? No. They say they don't know how long I'll be here for, so they're not going to waste time and money on him. These are the things that a lot of our young Black and ethnic minority youths were experiencing. Imagine coming out of the system and not being able to get anything done for you while your white counterparts are getting everything there is. However, it has to stop. So I've been very active. I've been continuing to do a lot of this work with young people and parents to let them know, don't sit down and take this quietly. It has to stop. And it's a pity that some of us had to lose our children for others to take notice of it. We need to change the system, and it has to start from in school, and it has to start with the justice system. Thank you.
A true picture of systemic discrimination even within the judiciary, which was supposed to protect the defenseless. The participants vividly highlighted the many deep-rooted institutional discriminations, which caused many human rights violations, daily killings by gun, racism, and health problems in the city. The participants raised many robust questions, and assorted professionals tried to answer with empathy. The deliberations were lively and interesting with dynamic participations from deputy police, lawyers, opposition politicians, former TDSP trustee, community leaders, activists, parents, college and university students, as well as many more concerned citizens. Here are some useful information and lessons learned from this virtual meeting. The panelists: 1. Acknowledge that racism still exists and it is real. With the issues at hand, there are dire needs the police services to have candid conversations, consensus, and working together with the communities to mitigate institutional discriminations such as police brutality, inappropriate use of force, and especially police harassment of young persons from marginalized neighborhoods. 2. Inform the participants that there are several avenues to formally file a complaint about any police misconduct. The lawyer advised, if a police officer is uncivil to anyone and arrests a person without warrant, there are a panoply of resources available to defend the victim from police harassment and misconduct. Some of the actions the parents or community leaders can take are: A. To reach out to Division Police Superintendent or Senior Police or Staff Sergeant in a police division. B. To reach out to a relevant lawyer. C. To report to the Office of Independent Police Director, IPD. D. To file a complaint to Human Rights Tribunal and Civil Actions. E. To contact Canadian Black Lawyers Association, and F. To contact Law Society and Legal Aid in Toronto. 3. With respect to keeping confidentiality, a lawyer informed the participants that the police cannot willy-nilly share confidential information about the victim as there are many protective legislations. Among various acts and legislations, the few are: Police Acts, the Youth Criminal Justice Act YCGA, Mental Health Act, Municipal Freedom of Information and Privacy Acts, and many more legislations are available to protect confidentiality of a victim.
Salwan Peter, who are a criminal human rights lawyer, we are privileged to have him, and also he's vice president of Toronto Center for Community Learning and Development. The next question is for a lawyer, Peter Salwan.
Okay, so my first question is, what can lawyer and government officers do to ensure that officers who are not held accountable for their actions toward those in the community are held responsible going forward?
Good evening. In terms of, if we're looking at policing and the issues that Inez is speaking about, police misconduct, there are several avenues to deal with police misconduct. The first thing, and Inez is speaking in the context of Regent Park. So let's focus, for example, if the misconduct is occurring in 51 Division. One of the things that a resident can do is they can reach out to the superintendent of the division, Peter Marrero, or they can reach out to one of the senior officers or the staff sergeant in respect to that misconduct. In terms of the things that lawyers can do, lawyers can deal with these things on a formal level or an informal level. For example, last week, there were a group of kids that were stopped at Paint Box, and they wanted an explanation from the police. And one of the youngsters had my number and called me. And so I was able to speak to the sergeant on the scene and get some information to pass on to the kid. And by speaking to the sergeant on the scene and the young person there and staying on the phone, it was able to de-escalate the situation rather than ramp it up. But in terms of formal mechanisms to deal with issues involving the police, there's the Office of Independent Police Director, OIPRD, and that's an office established under Part 5 of the Police Services Act that deals with code of conduct violations involving police officers. So if a police officer is uncivil to you, if a police officer arrests you without justification, if a police officer does anything that breaches a routine order issued by a chief of police, or their standing orders, or the Police Services Act, or any other law, you can file a complaint with the OIPRD. There's the human rights system as well. And if it's racial profiling or racialized violence, and the police treat you differently because of your race, gender, or any other identity, you can file a complaint with an application with the Human Rights Tribunal on the Human Rights Code, have that adjudicated. If there's an assault, a battery, or a tort, there's civil actions, and you can retain a lawyer. And we had extensive discussions on this a few weeks ago in this very room. There was lawyers from the Human Rights Commission. There were lawyers from the Black Legal Support Center. There was myself and another lawyer. So and I think that video is on YouTube as well through the center. So there's a panoply of resources available so that persons are held accountable for their acts and their omissions in their interactions with citizens. But I think I would be remiss if I don't say this. The police, I know their calls, I know there's a lot of stress in 2020, and there are calls to defund the police, to abolish the police, and to do all these kind of things in respect to the police. That's not going to happen. Our society, in terms of maintaining law and order, has to have a system in place. And the system in place is the police. And so it's important. And that's why they're in dialogues like this is important. Dialoguing with the police, robust questioning of the police, as we saw earlier with the questioners, with the deputy chief. You know, those sort of robust questioning are welcome. And, you know, perhaps the superintendent that's on the line, Superintendent Moreira, who is an expert actually in use of force. He used to be a use of force trainer. Perhaps he can answer questions in respect to how the police conduct themselves in terms of use of force, reasonable use of force, and that sort of stuff, and the sort of work that they're doing in 51 Division, because we do need the police in 51 Division. We had an incident recently where a man named Rowan Atkins went on Instagram and simply made a call out to his followers to shoot anyone in Regent Park on sight. Obviously, that created serious public safety issues for not only the young people who he may have targeted, but other people that live in the community, the old, the elderly, the middle-aged, the disabled, the differently abled. Everyone was concerned, and their concerns were heightened. We had an incident recently in Regent Park where somebody fired about 13 gunshots randomly at 10 o'clock in the evening. No one was killed, but I was at the River and Dundas intersection. That created serious public safety concerns. We have social media beefs between young people. Right now, I had to intervene. I had to intervene in a battle. So I went viral yesterday and today. I was viral because there was a beef between a young person in Regent Park named Lil Beretti and some guy named YG from a different part of the city. And there were videos that were quite disgusting. Actually, you could call the video that I got pulled down from YouTube a hate crime. And so what I'm saying is that even the young persons, we're speaking about gun violence. And we have to look at the code on the street and how it's perceived and how young people conduct themselves within that code. And so you have not only the police issue, but you have also the issue of young people and the sort of issues that are going on online that translate itself into the streets. And so if you see, in Regent Park, for example, yeah, the police are heightened right now. But when I see the police, I understand that it's because of the different tensions between various neighborhoods and because of the sort of stuff that's happening online that translates itself into shootings on the street. And I think what my view is the police should be upfront with the community with these matters to say, look, we're seeing what's going on online. We're getting these intelligence, their public safety concerns. We're out there in our numbers, and we're out there to ensure that you're safe. We're not trying to hassle young people or to racially profile young people.
Okay, so police have often been found to share confidential information to others within the community. Lawyers, what specific laws does this break, and can legal action be taken to prevent this in the future?
Yes. So police officers are governed by a code of conduct, and the code of conduct requires confidentiality of any information that they get in the course of their duties. So even police officers are supposed to share information even within their own police circle on a need-to-know basis. They can't just share information willy-nilly. And so if you have the Police Services Act, you have their code of conduct, you have the police oath, you have the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, you have the Mental Health Act, you have a panoply of different legislation depending on what the situational context is that binds police officers to confidentiality. If a police officer is loose with information, I think it raises serious concerns. And if you have an issue of that sort, you should contact me and have a confidential conversation with me. That is not acceptable. So, for example, young people, for example, their information is governed by the Youth Criminal Justice Act. That doesn't get shared unless there's a court order that allows the police to release that information to the public. Even lawyers can't share information about clients or anyone else without the consent of the clients. So I think, if you have issues with respect to any police officer who is sharing information that is supposed to be confidential, and the information that you have is credible, it's not hearsay, then something can happen to that police officer.
My question is in regard of the current time that we are all living in, the COVID. So it would be to ask the lawyer if any laws has been changed due to COVID-19 as pertaining to gun laws and anti-Black racism.
With respect to anti-Black racism and what else?
And gun laws.
Gun laws?
Yeah.
So you're saying there's a nexus between anti-black racism and gun violence, or anti-black racism and gun laws?
Yeah.
And you're going to have to provide the context to me, because are you speaking about gun violence amongst young people?
So our question is really because we know how the gun violence has really augmented. It's about 10% due to the current crisis, the current time. So as we know, we have seen the rise, especially in our communities, which are, low-income community and among our young kids. So what we would like to know is there are a lot of uh, laws that has been changed or shifted, and I would like to know if there is any gun law, if any law has been changed uh, for the past 6 months in pertaining to the gun laws.
No, there hasn't been any new federal legislation that deals with changes to the Firearm Act or the Criminal Code, or any of those laws. Firearms are within the ambit of the federal jurisdiction. So the Parliament of Canada passes laws in respect to firearms, and municipal and Ontario provincial police and police across Canada enforces those laws. There hasn't been any changes in respect to the laws governing firearms within the past 6 months or within the past year. What you do have is you have the emergency EMCPA, Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, that is in force right now to deal with this COVID crisis. And what the EMCA does through regulations, it has given different cities the powers to enact various states of emergency. And Toronto is still in a state of emergency because of COVID. We're not on a strict lockdown as you saw a few months ago. But for example, you saw the city passed a law or a regulation or a bylaw, sorry, that you must wear your mask. You must wear a mask if you're indoor, even if you're in the common spaces of your buildings. So I don't know whether, and I don't know, maybe we can commission some research into it, but I think any law that the city pass or the province pass or the federal government pass has to meet a test of proportionality. So I can't see a law that intersects with anti-black racism and gun violence, because while gun violence is predominant within the low income communities and amongst our African Canadian young people, it's not contained within these communities. We had the Bisha Hotel shooting, right? Where the Bisha Hotel is, that's quite upscale. And we had a shooting there. A lot of the shootings now are happening in City Place in the South Core, where there's a high degree of affluence in those high-rise luxury condominiums that are rented out as Airbnb. So the shooting isn't contained within the usual areas that it used to be before Jane and Finch, Oakwood and Vaughan, or Regent Park. It is certainly throughout the city, and you can go into the affluent areas now, and the shootings are happening there as well.
What we're hearing a lot of is when young kids are arrested, there's multiple charges laid, and most of them can be argued in court. And it ends up, why don't you plead guilty on this charge? The sentence will be minimum and we can move on. So the advice to these young people is plead guilty, even though it's going to go on your record and it's going to affect your future in many ways. Why does the quality of justice depend on how much money you're paying the lawyer? Because it seems as though the cases where this happens, they're normally legal aid cases, and they're normally young people, and a lot of young people are pleading to charges that could be fought in court, and they had a chance of winning. But it seems as though the easy way out is just plead for this one, and you'll get a record, but your sentence will be small. And these young people do not have the foresight to understand the long-term ramifications of doing this. So it seems as though the quality of justice depends on how much money you have in your pocket, and the people that are losing the most are the ones that need the most help.
Okay, so that's not always the case, because if you look at some of my most famous cases, those are cases with young people who do not have money at all. Those are young people who they're either legal aid funded or they're funded by no one at all. I use the cases pro bono. So it all depends on what the case is, who the lawyers are. So, you know, not every lawyer is the right lawyer for an individual's case. And, you know, you may find that young people may go to a lawyer who, let's say, for example, that lawyer works at Old City Hall, and that lawyer does volume cases. So that lawyer may have 500 cases. And all that lawyer does is that lawyer keeps the wheel of the system going. And the wheel of the system really goes and works by negotiations and plea bargaining. So most of our cases are resolved without a trial based on pleas. And that's why we have Crown pre-trials, judicial pre-trials, and case management conferences, so that we can see how these cases can be resolved without going to a preliminary inquiry or trial. And most of the cases are resolved that way. In my criminal practice, I'm not in the habit of pleading people out. So I'm a trial lawyer. There's some lawyers who plead people out and plead them out inappropriately when the person may have a defense. For example, if somebody is racially profiled, for example, if the police stop someone and had no reason to stop someone, and the situation escalated, and then you have the charges of cause disturbance or assault police. Those are cases that I normally fight very hard. You're not going to get me to agree to any plea. The Crown either withdraws the charges or we go to trial, right? And I deal with the police credibility in terms of what happened that led to this issue of assault police or cause disturbance. And I've won quite a few of those cases. And I have quite a few of those cases withdrawn, because I normally fight those cases really hard. Like I said, it all depends on the lawyers that people hire. It has nothing to do with legal aid. A lot of lawyers that work on legal aid certificates, and I do as well. Some of my most famous cases are on legal aid, because those are the most interesting cases that you get, the clients without money.
Wow.
And the clients with money actually pay for them. I mean, I have a case at the Supreme Court called Stanley versus OIPRD right now, where the OIPRD appealed all the way to the Supreme Court in a police misconduct case. The client didn't have to go into their pockets to pay me a cent. It's legal aid funded. and legal aid only pays a fraction of the cost. I have a case right now. When you walk on the streets tonight, when you walk past Moss Park or Alexandra Park or any of those parks tonight, you will see tents set up and people sleeping in tents. I'm that lawyer that have those people sleeping in tents because the city and the police was moving them. And I brought an injunction to allow homeless people to sleep in parks if they have a subjective fear of COVID in shelters. So I raise all those issues with you because it's not about money. It's about who you hire.
Yep.
And it's not even that you get what you pay for, it's who you hire. You have to research the lawyers. Not every lawyer is the right lawyer for your case.
4. Among many reasons discussed in relation to gun violence in marginalized communities, the root causes of racial profiling, systemic racism, and police violence are interwoven deep into government institutions, including police services, and tangibly trickling down in the school systems. Evidences are abound. For example, institutional racism in the judiciary had misused the Young Offenders Act, which has resulted in 80% of the prison population being persons with no high school qualifications. In addition, Toronto District School Board's policies such as the right to pass, student suspension, and expulsion policies do significantly affect many marginalized students, and in fact contributing to many ninth graders ending up in the streets of Toronto and becoming unemployment statistics. 5. Indicating that among the many embedded systemic discriminations, police services are also largely to blame. As much as enforcing law and order is very important to protect citizens and keep the city safe, the police services remiss accountability, transparency, community consultations, and feedback mechanisms to the community at large.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Okay, the first question is, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The first question is, how do you measure the de-escalation training that was part of the TPS mental health and addiction strategy? The question is for the police.
So I am looking after a program called MCIT. I'm not too sure if anyone tonight have heard of that. It's a mobile crisis intervention team, and which is a police team partner with a police officer and a mental health nurse, and we respond to people in crisis. And the question that was posed to, how do we measure the escalation? Really simple. Can we do better? Of course we can do better, and we're often looking at gaps and looking for improvement. Our measurement is 0 harm, 0 death, and 0 injuries. That's our mission. So if we go to a call, if our de-escalation training are put into place, our measurement is 0 harm and 0 injuries. So that is our measure. Can we do better? Of course we can do better. There are some instances where we will have people that will suffer injuries, and every time those incidents we debrief and we look at what happened and we will fix it.
Okay, sir. The community needs to know where the recent influx of the illegal firearm are coming from. Do you have any specific idea regarding where the arrival of these guns are coming from? Do you have any data on the guns that have been stopped?
Certainly, we have reported and we have stated numerous times during, police operations or during different media sessions where we have people in custody for firearms, and many of these firearms are illegal firearms, and it's coming from across the border. Even, a lot of people say, well, it's COVID-19 and the borders are closed, and criminals don't stop because of COVID-19, and the situation is very real. majority of the firearms that are being used by people in Toronto or across Canada are from United States, firearms smuggled across the borders. And we do work very diligently with services across the border. I mean, across our jurisdictions in Windsor, in Niagara, our border patrols, and all the surrounding jurisdictions. And that is one thing that we continue to tackle, illegal firearms being imported into Canada.
Okay, the problem is we're not seeing it. We're not seeing the reduction of the violence. Where is the evidence that all the program to prevent gun or gang violence are working? Where?
All right, so I think the
where are
question
community
was
partners?
well, first of all, let's sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Let me know when you're done with the question, then I'll go ahead.
Where are you? Why are you not collaborating with the community? Where are the lived-in experiences?
Okay, when we talk about gun violence, and it's the three, in violence in nature, we talk about any issues of gun violence or violence in general. We have to talk about from three approaches: prevention, intervention, and sustainability. The Toronto Police Service obviously is in the prevention by collaborating, collecting intelligence, but mostly our work is in the intervention where something has happened. And we all already heard it from Aaron and Odette. When something happens, when we intervene, it's too late. So the prevention piece, are we a key player? We are one of the many players, one of the many organizations that contribute to prevention. And I heard some of the earlier speakers spoke of programs. I can say this to you, Aaron. I'm going to give you some shout out again. Those community programs, they work. The Toronto Police Service, we're involved in a number of programs. One of them, maybe some of you have heard of, it's called the YIPI program, Youth in Policing Initiative. Over the years, we have over 1,500 young people work with the Toronto Police Service. And I still mentor them. I still have keeping in contact with each and every one of those young people. And I can tell you, programs do work, but programs, the funding doesn't come from the Toronto Police Service. It has to be a three-level approach from different levels of government, putting an honest effort and a focused effort into the prevention. And the Toronto Police Service certainly is a part of that important step in the prevention piece. And I want to add to you. You say, why are the problems happening? And here, we're not here to point fingers. Our job is not to create laws. We're there to enforce laws. There are laws that are created, and our job is, when we don't legislate law, we don't create legislations. We police, we enforce the laws. And once the person is apprehended, we put them before the justice system. And you've often heard my chief of police or other chiefs of police saying our justice system may need an overhaul, may need some attention. I can tell you, we arrest people, but they are on bail the next day with the same gun violence. But we only play a role in the gun violence. So Toronto Police Service cannot be, we collaborate with multi-agencies, and that's how we should approach the gun violence issue.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, everybody. We are really honored to be here today, even if it's a very sad event. We really see the energy, and we have been, I'm representing my community, the Harari Canadian Women's Association. So I would have a question for the Deputy Chief. So my question reads as follows. What steps are you willing to take to continuously inform and update families suffering from ongoing investigations and those families grieving from the unsolved investigations?
Okay, thank you for the question. I want to echo your earlier comment that it takes a lot of courage and to try to. No one wants to be in this journey to be victims, people or knowing family members that's been victims of gun violence or homicide victims. Nobody wants to. I want to really acknowledge the courage, each and every one of you, the collective voices and the individual voice being here to have a conversation and have some answers or some dialogue. One of the things that I really encourage is three things. It's listening, communicating, and responding. And so I really want to put that out and thanking each and every one. You're asking us what steps. I'm not in charge of the homicide squad. So I want to be very frank, and I want you to tell me, are we failing? If you are, then I'll take your suggestions back to our homicide squad and tell them what they're doing are not meeting the community's expectations. So I know that I worked in investigations for many years, and our job is to always inform the families with the status of investigation, and certainly sometimes I always encourage them. It's a mutual type of a relationship. Call us anytime if you want an update, but we do. When I was in charge of a number of divisions across the city, one of my asks of my investigators is this: very, very, very simple. Maintain a communication process, maintain a relationship with victims of crimes. Doesn't matter whether you lost a cell phone or a family violence or a serious sexual assault or anything. People call the police because they need the police help and assistance.
So hi everyone. Happy to be here, and it's a very difficult time. I'm from Regent Park, and I sit in the Regent Park Safety Network. We do a lot of work in our community, and my question is, why are low-income communities often targeted for mishandling police conduct?
Thank you for the question. I need to have a little bit more understanding the genesis and the question is being asked. You're asking a question where there are more police misconduct in low income areas. Is that what you're asking me?
In poor neighborhood areas, yes.
Where do you get that basis on? Because we do have a very comprehensive analytics and stats on all misconduct. So I can't comment on something that I am not familiar with. That you're making a statement, and I can tell you all misconducts are investigated vigorously, and their misconduct been taking place. And I said it earlier that the Toronto Police is not perfect, far from perfect, and we have officers that commit misconduct, and it happens in all areas and with all socioeconomic different classes. So until I get a little bit more understanding the basis of your statement, I cannot respond to that properly with that context.
Okay, so if you're saying that you cannot give me a proper answer, so if you're saying that we're working together in collaboration, why not then? You were just talking about the super from 51 Division. Where is the support of having a 51 Division here in this around in this community, but there is no residents' involvement in the committees or meetings that they have? So how are you supposed to work together with community members when you don't know, or they don't know what's going on and what's happening? They only come here when it's only a shooting and an incident, but do not see the great work that it's involving the community.
Well, I can tell you, a 51 Division has we have a program called the Neighborhood Community Officers. 51 Division has the most neighborhood community officers because we understand, we've been hearing from the neighborhoods that they want officers that truly belongs to their neighborhoods. In fact, 51 has the most assigned neighborhood community officers. These officers are there based on demographic, based on diversity, and also they are there for 4 years to get to know the neighborhoods. And I know that they often, every week, they have neighborhood meetings in the neighborhoods that they're assigned to.
Wow. Maybe you should come to our community. And
I was there. You know what? I've been in 51 Division at least.
No,
I'm
not 51 Division. I'm talking in the community.
No, that's what I mean. When I say 51 Division, I've been at 51 Division community in a different shape or form for a number of community meetings.
Maybe we could do a lot of stuff
in the community and have a little tour from a resident and speak to you from a resident's point of view.
Definitely. Superintendent Moreira is here, so I would ask you to link up with Superintendent Moreira, and I'll be more than happy to join any group that wants to take me on a tour in 51 Division and speak and engage and hear. You know, I want to really emphasize, we're on your side. The Toronto Police Service strive to be the best we can be and work with the community, and it's collaboration. And I always going to go back and say, no, we're not perfect. If we're perfect, then you know we wouldn't have officer committing misconducts, or we wouldn't having different issues, you know, conflicts between the police and the community. Having said, but I want to stress that we're on your side.
Okay, let me go to my other question. Community members are reporting in large numbers that police have often taken advantage of their authority and search houses without a warrant. Why is this taking place?
Well, once again, I cannot answer a question with no context. You're saying a large number. What are the large numbers, and what are some of these reportings? Because we have a mechanism, a complaints process where it's, if you're, you know, you talked about a lot of police misconducts, and so we welcome the community to file complaints, not to the Toronto Police Service, to an independent agency to investigate our conducts. But when you're making a statement saying we're doing that and I don't have any context, and I don't, certainly those conducts are not condoned. Those conducts are highly illegal, but I cannot speak to something that I do not have a context to speak to.
Okay, so you say to file a complaint. In the real world, when somebody files a complaint, you know that family, it's targeted from a police point. If you're filing that complaint to the certain police, your child or in your family members, they will be harassed by that police officer. So this is why in the poor communities, they don't put a complaint because of that reason.
Thank you for that comment.
Thank you, Ines.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, thanks, Soria, for putting this together. I think it's very timely and important that there be a day of action against gun violence. That has increased 10% so far this year compared to this time last year, despite COVID. We work on the streets across the city, from one neighborhood to another. And one of the things that the concern that is raised by the young people is the constant harassment as they go about their day-to-day activities. They go to a program, they're going home, they're stuck. They go to school, they're coming home, they're stuck. And it seems as though it's a revolving door, a cycle. And it doesn't do much to improve the relationship between police and community when young people think that they're still being targeted. They can't file official complaints because they feel there's going to be repercussions from doing it. So they keep it to themselves. But they speak to their friends and they speak to their family. I got stopped by the police again. Yeah, so the question to Peter is, how do you monitor the stops of young people on the streets of Toronto? Is there a report that says how many stops? How do you monitor it? Because the young people are saying one thing and the police are saying another thing. It's not that carding is official, but they're still being stopped without any reason. And it seems as though some of them are being stopped numerous times to the point where it's become normal for them. So that is my question to Peter and to the police apparatus. It doesn't do any good for either one of us. And these kids are intimidated by the police. They're bullied by the police because the police know that they're not going to speak up for fear of retribution. So my question is, what do you have in place to monitor that type of activity? And what do you have in place to eradicate it? Because we want to feel that our young people can walk on the streets and not be harassed by the police on a regular basis.
Thank you.
And one other thing too, and I don't have any reason to hold back because we're in a crisis mode. When black kids are walking down the street, they are in fear. When white people are walking down the street, they're not stopped. And white people tell me that when they are with black kids, the black ones will be stopped, but they're not stopped. So there's still a racial divide that takes place when the white people are coming to us and saying, I notice it. It's actually happening still. So they don't fear being stopped. They don't fear being intimidated. But black kids are telling me a different thing. So the question, Peter, is basically like, this is unacceptable and it's still happening. And you must have some mechanism in place to address it, because the young people are not going to come up publicly and say this is going on, because they fear the police are going to come back at them in some way, shape, or form. So this is my question.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Louis. You know, I've seen you on TV, and I've seen you around, and thank you for the passion. Thank you for the passion to speaking up. And certainly I want to say this. I acknowledge racism exists. You know, I'm not a young black male. I am a racialized member of the community. And when I was growing up, I was subjected to stops and unfair treatment by the Toronto Police Service. And it still exists. It still exists. And I want to once again acknowledge your passion and speaking up for the young people. What mechanism you asked me to have in place? We look at our officers' memo books. We look at our officers' day-to-day occurrences. And obviously that's not enough. I think one thing that it can be stopped is for you to champion for the young kids, or you and people from the community, and have a conversation with us and say, this got to stop. So, and you're saying this to me. And Louis, I know in a short little next 30 seconds, you and I are not going to get to a resolution, but I want to meet with you and speak with you face to face, Peter and Louis, and let's start from there. I always want to sit down with any groups, any organization, especially when we can make this city better, and when we can better even the day-to-day activity of young black males or young black adults moving freely in this city. I want to have that conversation. It's long overdue that we should have that conversation. And I can tell you, we are changing. And, you know, as a matter of fact, we are hiring a lot of new police officers in the last couple of years. And every one of them has a personal, I speak to each one of them. It's about our culture. It's about our mindset. It's about what we value as human beings. Yes, you know, this is a slow thing. Certainly we can use penalties to penalize them. Certainly that's what we use. And we have our professional standards. We have our complaint systems. But I do understand people don't want to speak up. But I want really to work for a collaborative approach. And I really want to, Louis, if you're willing, I want to sit down with you and to have that conversation and see if we can make some meaningful changes.
I want to join you as well.
Anyone can join me. I have that passion. I'll say this to you. It's not right. It wasn't right. You know, I recall an incident. I used to have a black friend that lived in Regent Park. And I grew up in Oakwood and Vaughan. I went and visited my friend in Regent Park. I took the bus, the Dundas streetcar. And when I was waiting to go home, 2 police officers stopped me and asked me what I was doing there. You know, that still resonates with me. And I'm not giving you each and every you a story to make your eyes wet. I don't need that, because these things are real. My son still goes out and gets stopped, and we're not even young, and we're not black families. I understand what you're saying. I still go home and I still get pulled over at this age. I'm an old man. And I still ask what am I doing? So I want that conversation. I think we need to have that conversation. And I want to bring the young people there. You know what? I'm very open to having a very honest, candid conversation and to come to some consensus what we can do collectively together.
My question has to do with the draft of the body-worn camera policy. So I was just reading over it, and some of the stuff I picked up was it's there to improve accountability for instance, in cases of excessive use of force and to address systemic racism. One thing I picked out was item number 7. It goes on to say, establishes that service members may not deactivate the body worn camera until all interaction with the public has ended. Item number 11, which is a control, mentions that it establishes that if a service member has not recorded in full or in part interaction with a member of the public, the service member must document the specific reason that the recording was not made in full or in full using a designated process. So there's a bunch. So I'm reading all these policies here, but one of the things I'm not picking up in, what are the repercussions for service members that if they break these policies, like what are the penalties the service member will face?
Mark, let me answer that for you. I think it's like anything else. Right now, currently, we have a police vehicle. What we call ICCS, in-car cameras. So anytime we stop the vehicle, we activate our emergency equipment. The in-car camera is on, and the officer must activate the in-car camera and the mic when they interact with the public. So there is a mechanism if they don't do it, and Superintendent Morera is in charge of a division, and we do audits every week and audit these mics and cameras. And same thing with the body camera. If they're not activated, an officer would be subjected to a disciplinary action. And don't quote me on that. I believe the.
Sorry, but Peter, not to just to interrupt, but you're mentioning the cam in the car, for example, right? We're talking about the body cam.
Yeah,
so this is the cam. So right. So the draft you guys, but right now you guys are still developing the draft.
Yes.
So this is what I'm reading right here.
With developing the draft, and we are looking at best practices across the globe, because other jurisdictions already have body cameras. You go to the UK, you got some of the jurisdictions in the US, they have body camera. We all look at the penalty range, and then the officer, if they do not activate the body cameras, they will be penalized. They'll be subject to sanctions.
Right, but I'm not talking about activating. I'm talking more that it was activated. So I'm going back to item number 7, item number 11. It discusses that it's activated, and at some point the service member decides maybe they might just chuck it off them because they don't want nobody to see the interactions that's happening within the community, because essentially what they're going to do is commit a human rights violation.
Well, that's for investigations, Mark. We cannot make those assumptions. And sometimes when we do when we deactivate the camera, maybe we're coming to a minor. Maybe there's a bona fide legal reason, and someone can wait in. Maybe a minor comes in, and we cannot record based on certain privacy issues. So we have to look at it from both lenses.
Right, but I'm not okay. But the thing is, I'm not talking
a legal situation and an abuse situation. So we have to look at it from both lenses. And,
right, but the thing is, we're not talking. The scope is not an invasion of privacy. We're not talking about that. We're talking about conduct that happens in the street, the public, right?
Okay, Mark. Let's. It's hard to have an argument.
Sorry, yeah, it's all yours. It's all yours. Go ahead.
Yes. You're saying we chuck it, and you automatically said that is a human rights abuse. I can't speak to that, whether that is or that isn't. It has to be investigated, properly investigated. If it's human rights abuse or a infraction, then the officer will be subject to a higher level of penalties or sanctions. But I can't speak just because he turned it off and chucked it away. Paraphrasing your words, that's a human rights abuse. I can't make that assumption right here and right now.
Right, but the thing is, if we don't see the footage, how are we gonna know what happened?
Well, you know what? That's for investigations, because you know what? You give me the what ifs, because right now we don't have body worn cameras, and we still conduct investigation by talking to witnesses, by canvassing video cameras. There are a lot of CCTVs around and dash cams, so we still conduct the investigation. So investigation will be conducted, and we'll find out what the circumstances were that the officer did not disengage on with his or her body camera.
6. Though invited, disappointingly, no TDSB representative showed up for this meeting, appeared to suggest no responsibility and accountability from such institution.
Tiffany, she will be joining us a bit late, and she's on the road. She's a formal TDSP trustee.
You've been close to the gun violence issue from a personal perspective. You've been close to the Toronto District School Board as a trustee. And I'm glad you're here because I trust your response will be from those perspectives. My question is 80% of the people in the provincial jail system do not have a proper grade 8 education. That means they've not achieved their grade 8 academic requirements. There's something in the Toronto District School Board called the right to pass, where people will be transferred, students will be transferred from one grade to another, even though they did not achieve their academic requirements, because they fear that if their schoolmates go to the next grade and they do not go along with them because they're held back, it's going to be too traumatizing for them. So they don't pass them, they transfer them to the next grade. And they're supposed to set up a support system to help them catch up. But that support system involves work from the principal, the teacher, the parent, and the student. And they're seldom able to get those people together to work out a plan. So Johnny will be transferred from grade 3 to grade 4, from grade 4 to grade 5, from grade 5 to grade 6, and so on. Yeah, so the question is, what can we do to get rid of the right to pass and ensure that when a grade 8 diploma is issued to a student, that is reflective of the fact that they achieved their academic requirements, can read and write properly, and are positioned to succeed at grade 9. Because, as I said at the beginning, you give people a false sense of security when you give them this diploma. They go to grade 9, they're not going to be able to manage. And as I said, 8 out of 10 of the population in the jail system in the provincial level cannot read or write properly.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, Louis, for the question. Yes, it is really unfortunate that no one is here tonight from TDSB at the moment, but it does happen quite often, and it's okay because I'm here to answer any questions. With regard to your question, Louis, the right to pass is something that is not just TDSB focused, it's across the province. And it's really a rule and a regulation in the Provincial Act and the Education Act that we definitely need to have change. So when I was the chair of the disciplinary hearings, I actually saw a lot of grade 9s. I personally would think that majority of the students were actually grade 9 students that were facing expulsions. And it is really directly with regards to the right to pass, because, once a student gets to grade 9, not only are they, bombarded with a new environment, new school, new friends, or even enemies, depending on where they're coming from, it became a lot for grade 9 students. And so majority of them were facing, or many of them did face expulsions. And so I think maybe eventually we'll be talking about suspensions, and especially with regards to suspensions during the elementary school years. I think it's really important for parents on this call to know that if your child is suspended, even if it's for 1 or 2 days, in grade 2, grade 5, all of these things are looked at if they ever face expulsion. So it does carry weight, even if it's 1 day, they all add up, and anyone, an administrator, can use that against your child. So it's really important to get those appeals when it comes to suspensions, and certainly fight for that, especially when they're in elementary school.
Thank you.
In terms of the right to pass, right?
Sorry.
We know the trajectory. We call it the school to prison pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
If they do not achieve their academic requirements, they have no confidence. Their windows are closed in terms of opportunities for them in the future, because they have to catch up in grade 9. And because they're not able to catch up in grade 9, they will take a different lifestyle where they disrespect the school system, and they will go into a lifestyle that can be negative in many ways.
Is this a
So
question or just a statement, my brother?
yeah, so for us, right, what can we do up front to make sure that when they get their grade 8 diploma that they've achieved their academic requirements? Like I don't want to be giving out dollar store diplomas, right, when the student cannot read or write, and we hear that all the time. So
I mean, for me, I guess my answer to that is really right now we have to fight to end that, the right to pass. So the best way to do that is to call on your trustees, to ask the school board, to ask the province, or call on politicians in general to ask the province to change the Education Act, to have a review of it. I've personally asked for that with regards to the suspensions and expulsions in the Education Act, to actually review it. This was many years ago. And our school board did pass a motion to ask, the Minister of Education at the time to do that, and it wasn't done. So this is the time to do that right now, especially with elections coming up in a year and a half from now. Ask the local politicians.
And Abdulwasi, if you have a question for TDSP trustee, which is the former TDSP trustee, for Tiffany, please ask question. Abdulwasi.
Thank you for organizing this kind of meeting for everybody. What would be your guidance to parent when it comes to identifying child's getting to interable?
Sorry, can you just tell me the last part?
I'm sorry, I'm just gonna repeat what he was saying. And what is your advice when, if you see, this is for the parents, what kind of advice can you give if your kids are see that they are getting in trouble?
Yes, okay, that's a great question. So most important thing is communicating with the teachers, having open communications with teachers. Advocating for your child is really, really important. Teachers and administrators are definitely, and now it's a different story with COVID, of course, being, virtual or in person, but teachers are, they're busy with a lot of students. And if a parent's not necessarily reaching out, they tend to not communicate with a parent unless the child is not doing too well. And so I think the most important thing is that you're having communications with this teacher and allowing them to realize that I'm here and I don't have to reach out if my child's not doing well. I need to reach out consistently and let the teachers know that you're available. But when it comes to the administrators, which is a different aspect, having open communications with administrators as well is really important, but you have to advocate for your child. And so if a teacher, an administrator, the principal is not speaking to you or not listening to you, you go to the next step. And the next step is to contact your area superintendent. And if your area superintendent is not speaking with you, you go directly to the trustees, who have to go to the superintendent to let them know that, I spoke with this parent, the constituents, and you want to ensure that you're constantly nagging at them, really, because they're working for you. So the most important thing is that you let teachers and administrators know that you're the parent, and you communicate with them consistently, especially if you feel like your child is doing wrong, or not doing wrong, but is being misunderstood. But most importantly, just finding out what's going on is really important.
To hear from you if there are any example of that work, and if you can just a little bit tackle on, let us know how we tackle these issues.
Well, that's a great question. I think that it's really important to figure out where does students feel the need to participate in gang or gun activities. And I think a lot of it is structural. I can only speak on behalf of myself, growing up in the Jane and Finch community and being in what we considered sort of South Finch, and feeling that, North of Finch was always sort of like an enemy. And it actually does play out in school. And I don't really talk about this either, but I actually felt the need to carry a knife when I was in, grade 7. And it was just sort of this, feeling of needing to do that because you would cross over different areas to get to school. And so that's my experience with sort of the cliquish idea of and wanting to carry a weapon for sort of protection. And so that's something that I actually resonated with when I was the chair of the disciplinary committee and telling my fellow trustees about how, students that were caught with either, a weapon or a fake weapon, like a fake firearm, because they felt the need to protect themselves in case, while going to school, which is a safe place for them. I understood it. And so it wasn't necessarily because students, felt the need to participate in gang activities, but it was because sort of the neighborhood was perpetuating these types of like social barriers that were actually constructed by media, stigma, and just, poverty and violence around in the neighborhood. And so the feeling of trying to be safe, especially if you're being jumped or someone knows you're from a different area within the same community, it's just something that is really real. And I think that most importantly, students feel unsafe and stigmatized, especially marginalized when you come from communities like, marginalized communities. And so it's not necessarily because they want to join gangs per se, or it starts in school. It's really because you're kind of all joining together in school. That's just my example. So I can't really tell how it starts in school or why people decide to carry weapons or be a part of gangs, but I can only speak from my experience or kind of growing up and understanding and hearing from students in the disciplinary committees as to why they were carrying weapons. I can only speak to that.
Hello, my name is Aaron Greaves. First and foremost, just to introduce myself, I used to cause trouble back in the day. I was actually convicted for a firearm when almost 10 years ago. Now that I changed my life around, I went back to school to do community and justice services. I graduated and it's been amazing. I've just been on this journey, and now I work with Hope. It's helping offenders on probation excel. I work with Eddie Martinez. I'm part of the Young Street Mission team, and I bring this personal experiences that I have and my journey to the team and try to help our youth, turn their life around and escape from gun violence and gun crime. So I've been affected by an incident in my life with gun violence. I've been shot myself. This changed my whole perspective on things because before I was shot, that's when I was actually arrested for this firearm. And I tried to change my life around, just hang with different people and stuff. And it just affected me, obviously physically, but mentally as well, because, our youth, they try to do better sometimes, and life always goes ups and downs, right? So I was trying to do better, and this incident still happened to me, but I was trying to keep out of trouble and everything. So it just kind of gave me that, that shocking feeling in the back of my head, is this worth it to try to live a different life? And, shortly after, I had numerous friends who were murdered by gun violence. So it definitely plays a psychological, toll on our society and me as well. And, it's just terrible. So what I would like to see done better or improve is just more community programs. I know everybody says this, but they're so needed because we need people who look like us, people who are from our communities to help these youth. It's probably one of the only ways that will work, because when people see people that they're familiar with, people who have similar stories from them, we can help them cope through these battles. Because life, no matter if you're trying to do good or bad, life is filled with ups and downs. But when you have barriers that are placed against you already, and you come from communities that are known for gun violence, it's hard to break that stigma. So we have to mentally try to help our youth as well as physically and provide them jobs as well. That's one thing. People always say we should provide jobs for people, but these youth need careers. They need 9 to 5s that they can provide with their family legally and not feel bad about themselves, right? So government and different sectors in the workforce need to open up to people who do have records, because people who have records, they're told to either your own open your own company or go do a skilled trade, which is great. But some people, they want to use their mind, they want to use their skills, they want to give back to society in a way that they have taken away, like restorative justice. So if we can't get into these sectors, and it just, why would I change? So that's one thing I want to see change. Again, thank you for your time. My name is Aaron Greaves, and I work for Hope, helping offenders on probation excel. Thank you.
The meeting ended with common understanding that the police services ought to enhance their collaboratively work with communities, parents, elders, the youth and civic organizations in order to mitigate fear, mistrust, gun pandemic, and systemic discrimination within the city of Toronto and beyond. Time and again, to avoid loss of young lives, and to decrease heartbreaking street shootings and abuses of law enforcement in the city, several suggestions were made. 1. Engage marginalized communities in any design and policy formulations. 2. Establish accountability and transparency in police services. 3. Invest in vulnerable communities to promote mental and well-being programs. 4. Understand diversity and uphold minority rights. And 5. Address root causes of gun violence such as institutional discrimination, prejudice, racism, education inequalities, unemployment, and poverty at large.
Hi guys. Okay, I'm just gonna post my questions also. It's for anybody government members who are available tonight in our meeting. So Government of Ontario have been funding and implementing community safety and well-being planning and working with the community partners to develop a modernized approach to community safety. Where are the example of this work, and how come we have not seen this trickling down to the community? And this is to any government officials. So this is, just to repeat it again, this is the question that is the most that nobody wants to ask, is the elephant in the room. It's majority of the questionnaires from the chat and from the community has been asked.
It's a really good question. I think, I think it's a really good question. I think overall, what I see as an official opposition member in the legislature is, the provincial government talking about programs and initiatives that they're investing in at the community level, particularly related to violence, but we're not actually seeing a lot of the funding enough funding flowing into specific programs that we'd like to see. And in fact, one of the things that, we've been pushing for as NDP members in the legislature is to start shifting more resources from policing into more community-oriented programs, particularly in Black and Indigenous and racialized communities, recognizing that, our communities know best how to address issues of violence, and that, the root causes of violence that we see in our community lie upstream in things like poverty reduction, in opportunities for youth, in good education. And these are exactly the types of priorities that we've seen the Conservative government under Doug Ford consistently cutting and underfunding. And we've seen issues even with allocated funding in some programs not fully flowing. So I'm not sure if that fully answers the question, but from my perspective, I would suggest that that's probably where one of the issues is with allocated funding not being fully spent. I know that we've seen that issue with COVID-19 funds with upwards of, I think, what was it, like somewhere in the range of $3 to $6 billion of COVID relief funds just simply being allocated, funds being unspent by different ministries. So there's some concerns with underspending there, and we're trying to get to some of the root sources of that to hold the government accountable for where it's talking the talk in some cases, but not actually walking the walk and resourcing our communities fairly.
Thank you for that. It doesn't answer my question because money has been already allocated to all these programs, to anti-Black racism, just within the school system, which we invited a lot of the trustees and Ministry of Education who did not show up. $2 billion was allocated just within the COVID-19 initiative, right? There's been over $74 million, $200 million even within the anti-Black racism. There's the the city, even municipality, you name it. The issue that the community has, majority of them is community safety for youth program. The community hasn't seen any of that. So who are these community partners that the government has been feeding this funding and we're seeing nothing on the ground?
And I don't necessarily know that I have an answer to that specific level. You know, I'm not a government member, I'm an opposition member. So my role in the legislature is a little bit different. I don't get access to see, for example, decisions that are made at the cabinet table around how money is allocated and where it's specifically going. And it's a frustrating thing to say, but our role is an accountability measure, but it sometimes takes a little bit longer to follow the money through processes like public accounts. So that's a committee process where, you know, at the end of the year, when the auditor goes back and looks over the books for the whole province and says, you know, hey, government, you said you were going to spend X billion of dollars in this bucket of resources, and you only spent, you know, 20 or 30% of it. That's when we go to committee and say, you know, hey, government, why are you underspending in our communities when you've allocated money, but then the money is not actually leaving the ministry and coming out to the organizations? And more importantly, we sometimes don't know which organizations have been tapped on the shoulder. And so I share in your frustrations. It's not an easy process to navigate. It's not a public friendly process to navigate either, but it's one of the few tools that we have in our toolbox as opposition members. But what I can say is, you know, the Financial Accountability Office has recently shown that the Ford Conservative government has shortchanged our communities in terms of allocation for money, and they're just not sending the money out the door to the tune of billions of dollars. So that, you know, they'll show up and make their shiny announcements about what they're investing in, and then they're never writing the checks. And we've seen this, whether it's with COVID-19, we saw it with the rape crisis centers, we've seen it on, you know, dozens of different files, and it's not right. And we're continuing to you know, try to hold the government accountable for their bad behavior here. But it's not an easy process, and they can dig in. They have a majority in the legislature, and they can dig in and continue to act the way that they've been acting with very little recourse.
Yeah, basically the main question, again, a majority of the questions that we've received from the community is based on, and I think you mentioned also, Susan, in committees. A lot of the community members have lived in experience and they're not part of the consultative committee. Okay, they always attend this whole town hall meeting where they're there just to listen. Their voices are not being heard, except for finally, this is the first time measure that is done by lived in experience resident that put this together, and community organizers. But majority of the time is their voices are not being heard. It's easy to put the blame on different government officials, but the reality is the gun violence and all this is deep rooted, and it existed even with an NDP government or liberal government. So that's the fact. So as an opposition, are you willing to take that in regards to people's voice in your area, in your community, to say that this is what's happening? This is what the community has been saying, that money is not being trickled down. Majority of the question is about children's program, youth being used as the lived-in experience as youth outreach workers. You've heard from mothers that have been affected by gun violence, but yet everybody wants to do the facade meeting, and in this case, COVID-19, the Zoom. Nobody wants to talk about the real issue going on, which is the funding and poverty. So are you, as a government official for the opposition, able to bring that up to Queen's Park?
Absolutely. And I try my best to make sure that, the voices from our community, on the topic of violence and especially poverty. And, when we look at, everything that poverty encapsulates, whether that's, access to housing, access to education, access to adequate employment and training opportunities, post-secondary education, all of it. Those are exactly what the priorities that I'm fighting for at Queen's Park, 100%. And, I've lived the violence in this community. I've spoken publicly a number of times, and I've shared with a number of folks that, one of the reasons I ran for public office was after a shooting in Regent Park that my husband and I witnessed, the Lamar and Champagne shooting. And, it's, the trauma of that is something I carry with me into that building every single day. And, but I know that the solutions that we're looking for in our community are not quick and easy fixes, right? It's investments in our systems that have been neglected and underfunded for going on 2 decades now, right?
We've been hearing a lot because of anti-Black racism. There is a lot of funding and the provision in TDSP systems that injected, but at the same time, you cannot see the TDSP trustee are not here right now. And we are talking about losing young people. Okay, so that's how many young people that we need to lose in order to act. And we see in the name of anti-Black racism, there is a lot of money was injected. We've been hearing and we're seeing millions of dollars. Where are those monies? Why we are losing still Black kids on the streets? Why? It will take all of us to make a change. But where is the TDSP right now? Throughout the huge billion of dollars that runs, and none of them are available to attend this, the Zoom event. We are talking about the day of action that we need to change. All of us will take to make a change. I think we will follow up with them, whatever that it takes. If we want to make a change, all of us will take to make a change. Thank you for giving your input, Suze.
Question to the Toronto Police Service officer is, are there plans to sensitize vulnerable and struggling children who are recruited into gangs to thrive in the community due to poverty and systemic inequalities? Because I believe most of these young or the children, they are from struggling either families or either some of them, they don't have, they are homeless, but the gangs use that chance to lure them into gang violence, and they end up on the street killing other people. Are there plans? That's my question.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Certainly there are plans. At this Thursday at the Toronto Police Services board meeting, you're going to hear a presentation from our gang exit strategy, from our members from our gang exit strategy. And it's not about people exiting gangs. It's also about the families that are impacted in the immediate area that talks about prevention, about entering a gang lifestyle. And this is offered free to every community member, and for the mothers, for families, for victims, for neighbors that would want to refer them to the Toronto Police Service. They say, we will take care of it, and then we will work with community agencies for employment, for education, and also for the bottom line is to all exiting gangs or entering gang lifestyle. And we also have I spoke earlier about the amazing work of our neighborhood community officers at 51 Division, and each and every day they're into the neighborhoods and speaking to kids in the community centers and different venues. You know, we try to go to schools as much as we can, but right now I think some of you have some difficulties. We have some difficulties in engaging into the schools, and certainly it's a COVID, and also we're working on a new protocol to maybe re-engage back in the school. So those are some of the strategies we'll work with to encourage kids not to enter gang lifestyle, or if in the event that they have enter a gang, and we have strategies to help them exit gangs.
I'm sorry, just in addition to that, in many avenues, we look at community policing as the best in preventing such acts to happen. But do you think, is there a plan to collaborate with the TDSB and other community boards that's working with kids to use those boards in spreading this message of gang violence and also in preventing gang violence?
Yes, the Toronto Police Service value all partnerships and collaborations, and I have to be honest, we're having a little challenge right now in reconnecting with the TDSB, and partly it's our fault, and I said it, and I'll keep on saying it. We're not perfect. We're not a perfect police service, and we have made mistakes, and we want to endeavor to correct those mistakes, and we want to get back to the schools and reconnect with the school populations. And certainly they're critics of us saying that we are there to victimize our children. So we need to have a balanced narrative, and we want to have that conversation. And I'm always willing to sit down with anyone that wants to work in collaborative fashion and to work on some mutual solutions, first and foremost to benefit the communities that we serve. And certainly we are working, with the Toronto District School Boards in different venues, getting back and connecting with the school populations.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, I have a question by Jasmine. Go ahead.
My question is, hi. My question is, and I wrote it in the chat as well, does the Toronto Police Service have an accountability body that is citizen or resident led and offers input on policies and procedures? And if not, why not? And how do we create these spaces to have these conversations in a structured way? I guess my point is, a lot of systems and policies have long-term implications and impacts, but there is no feedback mechanism for policymakers, for decision makers, for police officers to really understand the ramifications of some of the actions that were taken maybe 10 years ago. And I think the situation that we're finding ourselves in is a lot of systemic issues coming to the surface in these really awful, horrible ways. And so if the consultation is just happening as a one-off, as someone else had mentioned, not in a systematic way, if there is no accountability, then how can we actually enact change and bring the views of the residents back to the decision makers? Because there's an issue of power and access here that isn't being addressed. And so I'm wondering if
that's a good question.
The police officer could speak to that.
Sure, certainly I can. Recently, the Toronto Police Services Board published a 81 recommendation public document, and it talks very specifically about accountability. And first, I answer your question about accountability, the body. That is our Toronto Police Services Board. We report to a civilian oversight board. Do we have a accountability group for every policy and procedure that we adopt? No, the answer is no. But having said that, right now we have, I don't know if anyone been watching, keeping a tab on the Toronto Police website. We're looking for civilian oversight bodies to sit on.
You are frozen. It was very good question, Jasmine. And I really like your question. And now Peter is still frozen. And we had a Know Your Right workshop about a month ago. There was the commission were published, but none of the recommendation was implemented. This is the issue that we have. There is recommendation, but none of them were implemented. That is huge gaps. Like, why we do consultation? Why are we doing this and that? What if we are not implementing what that been recommended? I'm not sure if he's still frozen. Maybe Salwan Peter, he could say a few words about this. Salwan?
Yeah, what I understand the question to be is how can citizens be integrally involved in the process? How can there be citizen initiated, citizen led bodies? And I mean, you can look at it on various levels. You can look at it at a divisional level. You can look at it police system wide in the Toronto Police Service, or you can look at it Ontario wide. So my understanding is, and I haven't really participated in it in the division where I live, but I understand there are police consultative committees and there are police citizen community groups where citizens can be involved with the police on certain levels. In terms of the police, in terms of citizen demanding accountability, of course, we discussed the OIPRD before, the Office of the Professional Independent Director, but we also have various Toronto police-wide committees, for example, as a result of the local inquest. So as a result of the local inquest, there was several committees that were formed to deal with the issue of anti-Black racism and mental health. It is true that there seemed to be a tension between the Ontario Human Rights Commission and the Toronto Police in terms of how they go about implementing recommendations that the commission put in place to deal with racial profiling and the experience of young Black men, especially with respect to racialized violence and carding. So perhaps that's an issue that has to be litigated in the appropriate case. But I mean, to the lady's question, I mean, there's numerous ways you could be involved as a citizen. I think it's just being connected with the right people, because I sit on some technical tables. So as a lawyer, I'm involved in police policy making on a province-wide level. And I think Peter Morera sits on some of the technical tables. So I sit on technical tables on police investigation. I sit on technical tables dealing with police misconduct and how the regulations should be implemented and how the rules governing policing throughout the province should be formulated to address these issues. So even as a citizen, I get to influence policy at the highest level in policing. And so it's simply a matter of you being connected to the right people so that you could be recommended to sit on bodies that influences police policies, procedures, and practices.
Thank you.
Do we know or if any studies done as to how our youths get access to guns easily? If so, are there any steps taken to address the issue? This might be a question for Deputy Chief.
I think he's back.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry.
Perfect.
I can tell you we don't have a study, and that's something that we can consider. And I said earlier that most of the guns are coming from illegally, certainly smuggled across the border. But we have not undertaken a study, and I don't think that study should be done solely by the Toronto Police Service. It should be done from a holistic justice sector lens, not solely from the Toronto Police Service.
All right, thank you. Selwyn, I don't know, this is a question for you. I guess it might be a bit of social commentary, but the question is, do you think any of the internet drama with the Toronto rappers, does it have an effect on our city?
Well, it does. It does. It certainly, we spoke earlier about the shooting, the 13 gunshots that were fired in Regent Park recently. There's the issue with Regent Park with this Rowan Atkins who threatened all the residents of Regent Park. I dealt with a situation with the young Lil Beretti versus YG yesterday where I got YG's Instagram, not Instagram, but his Facebook, not Facebook, sorry, his YouTube video that was highly derogatory and threatening Lil Beretti with death, taken down. And so you have these situations where these hip hop artists are engaging in online commentary that translate into violence within the communities and pose a threat to public safety. As a matter of fact, that is totally unacceptable. And there has to be a limit. Freedom of expression has limits. Freedom of expression doesn't take you into the realm of hate crime. You're not allowed to say boom, 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 batty boy has to die and all that sort of nonsense. Or you threatening to come into someone's neighborhood and shoot it up. So the person asked a legitimate question. And right now, I agree with Ian that he shouldn't have put his face on the internet, because it's a time where it's really tense in this city with all these diss tracks and all these serious threats to violence. I did a case years ago. Where somebody made a video threatening to kill someone else. And the Peel Regional Police didn't take it seriously. And the person who made the video actually went up to the person's house and killed them.
Wow.
So I do not take these videos lightly. I do not take these videos lightly, and that's why I intervened in that case, because I found that the situation in that case was quite synonymous with what's going on in the city right now, and it had to be acted upon. There's the snitch culture on the streets, where these young people, even though there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of fear right now in the city, and these young people cannot turn to the police, or they can't turn to the system. And so it's good if you have elders in the community to intervene and to act. So the question that the person asked is quite a question that's apt for right now, because there's a lot going on right now with these violent tracks. And, like, these guys are putting out explicit commentary. Like YG put out in his song, when you read his lyrics, he's actually saying that he came into Lil Beretti's community and shoot it up.
Wow.
So he's given evidence against himself when you read the lyrics of his song.
Thank you. Mark, is there more question?
I got 2 more. Angela, can you please turn on your mic and video feed? Are you there, Angela?
Yes, I'm here, but I can't get the video on.
It's okay. We can hear the mic.
Okay. Basically, this is both to Selwyn and you and Peter. I have seen a progression, and my question is, I can look back and see when the Young Offenders Act was changed from phase 1 and phase 2 to what it is today. Gun violence went up. It's almost like if it was changed to curb certain things, but it seemed to be recruiting more of our ethnic minorities for the jail system. And this justice system needs a total overhaul, I'm very sorry to say. And I need to know what is going to be done about that overall. Because all it's doing is creating a stronger situation of institutionalized racism. And I think this is what they were trying to do. Get them off the street, all the little Black kids and ethnic minorities. But to me, it seems to be feeding into keeping a system going and fuel with bodies of our young people.
Thank you.
Let me try to take a stab at this. I think I understand from Angela is what needs to be done. First of all, I want to reiterate that we do have some lobbying power or influence power as a police service or police services across this land to influence some changes of legislations. But having said that, legislations are generally enacted based on the community feedback and the political party that are in power. So the Toronto Police Service or any other police services, our job is to enforce the legislation. I used to, I think I heard you say the Young Offenders Act has progressed to the point where it's victimizing or marginalizing young Black offenders or offenders from racialized community. I can't get into that. I can't comment to that. I certainly we are seeing arresting people from all parts of different communities. But is that a direct correlation or reflection or correlation to the Young Offenders Act? And I don't have any informed answer for you on that one, Angela. Maybe someone can weigh in from a legal point of view.
Angela, the point that I would make is that, you know, we had a Commission on Systemic Racism in the criminal justice system in 1995, the Cole-Gittins report. We had various reports that address various forms of racism up to the most recent Ontario Human Rights Commission reports. I mean, we not only have the police are at the front line, they're the gatekeepers, but we have probation officers, we have judges, we have lawyers on the defense side, we have Crown lawyers, and it takes sensitivity on all sides to deal with the complex issues of systemic racism that comes from implicit bias, and it goes up the line. And so, you know, we need the system to reflect us. You know, they're not going to appoint me as a judge, as you know, even though I'm qualified to be a judge. They're not going to appoint me to be a judge. Not the Liberals, not the NDP, not the Conservatives, because I take strong stance on certain issues, and my stance is pretty clear. It's pretty obvious for everyone to see. And so, you know, the system doesn't want anyone rocking the boat. So there, you know, I rock the boat from my little castle, but they don't want me to rock the boat as a judge. And so they're not going to appoint me. Otherwise, they'd appoint me already. You know, so, you know, it's not only the police that is a problem, it's a system-wide problem. And so, you know, the comments you made are quite, it's, you know, we deal with from the pipeline, from schools to prison. And that's why we fought hard to reform the Education Act that was suspending and expelling our children. You know, so I don't disagree with you. The Youth Criminal Justice Act, though, the Youth Criminal Justice Act is a reform. So its aim is not necessarily to criminalize the kids. And that's why they have informal resolution and different forms of diversion. So it's to find the least available penalty for these kids so that they're not criminalized and they're not stigmatized. So, but I agree with you that if you go to certain courts, you know, they're packed with young Black and brown men, and it's kind of troubling.
Thank you, Salwan. Do we have any more question? I think we are.
We got two more. One for the MP and then there's one from Ali. Are you there? Turn on your mic and video.
And this will be the last question. I think it's 8:20. Sarah will do wrap up as well.
Ali, are you there?
Oh, yeah, I'm here. Do you see me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, my question is, I live in Lawrence Heights. We have been having a lot of issue with gun violence. Since last year, we have like 40 shooting going on in Lawrence Heights. We lost a lot of young guys in Lawrence Heights, and a lot of young guys has been wounded. So my question is to the police. Since that time, we don't have any updates on it or any arrests for going on with this. So we have been asking for a long time, is there anyone for all these cases like has been arrested, or is there any investigation or any updates? So we live in the dark. So I know like our division is 32, but I would like to ask the deputy, like if he has any thing he can add to that, because I remember there were two shootings happen, one in China City there, and one is college and Batras, like just about a year and a half ago. So as I remember, that case has been solved within few weeks. The arrest has been happened. But in Lawrence Heights, the young guy we lost was just about a week ago. We just buried him like about 2 days ago. So my question is, why there is no any updates from the police, and why we don't have any arrest for the community? Because I know a lot of people, they're asking that many questions in my neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. First of all, I don't know which case you're speaking to, because but my question to you and my suggestion to you: have you contacted Superintendent Brian Bott of 32 Division and asked for an update? If not, then I would strongly recommend you do that. You made a comparison, a shooting in college in Bathurst, there was an arrest, and there are no arrest in 32 Division. I certainly can give you different investigative. Not every investigation is unique. I mean, it's the same. Every investigation is unique and based on witnesses, based on statements. So I don't know what was the circumstances of the college in Bathurst shooting compared to the one in Lawrence Heights, in terms of witnesses, in terms of video cameras, in terms of a lot of evidence collected. So that's why we can't say why is one case solved, why the other one is not solved. I do not have the chronological or investigative notes to comment on that. But in terms of the update, I was strongly, I'm asking you to call Superintendent Bott as a resident of 32 Division and ask for it an update. And you deserve it, an update, and you can demand an update.
I thank you so much for that, because it's not only comparing like two cases, but what I'm comparing here is a lot of cases has happened in Lawrence Heights. And unfortunately, all those cases we have, even there's where we live, we have like every building, like there's a 3, 4, 5 cameras going in there. So a lot of times when we ask that question is, do you guys have any witness or anybody has been seen anything? But I don't know what are those cameras for. But anyways, thank you so much.
All right, so we have one final question. It's going to be for the MPP. Tisha, please go ahead, turn on your mic and cam. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Soraya. Thank you, all of you who contributed to putting this together. Okay, so this question is mainly for, I guess, the MP and as well as Peter. Peter, if you can also maybe just weigh in on this question. I know you both are very involved in mobilizing community and, providing some level of advocacy and getting communities to, I would say, bringing programs into communities, or bringing the community's voice to different levels of government. And I'm just wondering, because we do understand, yes, poverty and issues of anti-Black racism and the intersection we're seeing currently of gun violence, and there are a few root causes, of course, we can always point out when it comes to gun violence. That mainly being, of course, when it comes to anti-Black racism, the internalized generational trauma that does rivet through these communities. And I'm just concerned in regards to what is being done within these communities in regards to the MP, what work is being done, what is on the platform, what are the strategies that are going to be put forward in order to improve or even to bring to light young people's mental health in these vulnerable communities, because they are continuously experiencing or witnessing violence as well as being subjected to it. Whether it's on TV, whether it is, again, in their school systems, or in their neighborhoods, right? And feeling, I'm getting from a lot of young people that safety is one of the things that they can't always feel comfortable or feel that it's guaranteed, right? So I want to know, what plans do you have as someone who holds some level of power in contributing to building communities? What are we gonna see in the next year or two in order to help eradicate all forms of violence, mainly in these vulnerable communities like Regent Park and Jane and Finch, and where we're seeing, I mean, we can say that it's being brought out of these communities and it's happening everywhere. But what we do understand that it's disproportionately impacting Black youth, whether you can say it's influenced by hip hop or influenced by whatever is happening in media, or we still need solutions that are community focused. And I just want to know, on your end, police level as well as MPs level, what can we do? What will you be doing in regards to programming?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, and it's a big one. I would say that, again, from an opposition perspective, we're not directly involved in program development and implementation. So I don't know that I can answer the question from a program level perspective, but a broader level.
Broader, macro level.
Yeah, macro level policy perspective. We're just not, I don't have the kind of contact or oversight or direction over the individual ministries and how they work with organizations to develop program specific initiatives. What I can say is, where we're publicly standing on a number of the big level policy issues that you've spoken to, one of our most recent policy announcements is a white paper that we've developed, a policy paper called Ending Police Violence, Investing in Black, Indigenous, and Racialized Communities. And I've posted a link to that further up in the chat. And we're, really trying to share that policy document in a draft form with the communities right now to make sure that folks really have an opportunity to give us feedback on it. But it really includes broad strokes in terms of making sure that we're investing in alternative first response to policing models, which does include an emergency mental health response. Respecting that, we're certainly fond of our neighborhood officers and the work that they do, that, mental health calls are not always best placed within policing as the first response. And making sure that we have properly trained mental health professionals that are actually responding to those calls in our community. So we're looking at an alternative first response policing model or first response mental health model, as well as again, higher level pieces. I know we have a private members bill around addressing wait times for child and youth mental health. We're looking at, and when I think bigger as well, we're looking at, right now is the moment, halfway through an election cycle, and to kind of get a little bit more partisan, is now is the time that we're developing our policy platform for 2022. And so now is the time to actually be reaching out to not just my party, but all of the parties to make sure that these particular perspectives are being included in the platforms that are being developed right now. And so, we're still continuing to look at things like pharmacare coverage, dental care coverage, better investments in housing, community housing, supportive housing, transitional housing, mental health and addictions. All of these broader kind of community wellness pieces are those high level policy pieces that are really foundational to the values of where I stand as an elected representative. But if there's specific pieces that folks want to see shine through in that platform development piece, now is the time. Please reach out to my office. I'm happy to sit down with folks and have a more nuanced conversation than we can have in as I quickly try to answer a question on a call around what specific asks do you have of us that you want to see us take a stronger, bolder stance on as we do that policy refinement work right now. Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
Sue.
you. Thank
And
you.
I think we are 8:35. I'm gonna call Sarah. We're supposed to be done by 8, but thank you, everybody's sticking out. So Sarah, go ahead.
Thank you, Soraya. Thanks for everybody, also for the panelists for asking all those, or trying to answer all those hard questions that was directed. I just wanna, there's a few things that I wanna, when we wrap it up, why we did this is trying to find solution. Yes, we had a lot of questions. We know we can't get the solution in one night, but we're starting it. This is the main conversation. I also want to bring it up that the youth itself, there's a lot of youth on the chat that have brought out a lot of questions, like, comments in regards to why are youth not involved when it comes to this kind of platform. Biggest thing is they don't trust anything and they haven't seen any action. We have to call the elephant in the room. They are the future. And if they're not sitting at the table and we don't recognize them, we don't give them the employment opportunity, we don't deal with the educational system, this will continue on. Our goal for tonight is to make sure that this is not going to be the usual Zoom meetings, the usual panelists, the usual town halls that doesn't go anywhere. We are saying that for the first time ever, let's finally find a solution. And the solution, first of all, starts with what is the problem? Everybody knows. We've asked the questions, but really, has the question really been answered? And from the comments, from what we're seeing it hasn't. It really, really, really hasn't. And sorry about my camera's kind of off. In regards to that, so what we want to say is to the community members, to the people being affected by the gun violence, please, 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 if anything else, is get involved. You can start by getting involved through your parent council in the school system. Start from that. Many of us even here sitting today, that's where we started. Get involved in your children's as early as possible. When it comes to the government official, yes, there is funding. Yes, there's a lot of programs that many of the parents have mentioned. Do they exist? Yes, but the problem is the community is not aware of it. There's some sort of missing communication. Maybe the right people are not sitting on the right tables that are supposed to trickling down to the community, and that has to change. Maybe this is the time to call on for action and to call those individuals that are not making a difference right now, whether it's politicians, whether it's the community partners, whatever it is, this is the time to call on. Many children have been dying and young boys and girls are dying through both mental health and in the community. That generation, there's a huge gentrification happening in this community. We know what the biggest target is. It is the public school system. It is the housing, Toronto housing complex. It is poverty. It is the systematic racism. Nobody wants to address that. We are not putting a blame on one division. We're not saying it's all, the answer is Toronto Police Services or all the blame is on them. We're saying it's everybody. And in order to solve this and find a solution, first, we need to address the elephant in the room. If there's no accountability from all levels of government. And how do we know that? We have invited all those individuals that are policy and change makers, but they have decided not to show up because their pictures are not being posted on the flyer. Believe it or not, that's the reality. We got to call on them. We got to call on them. Unless it's benefiting them financially, or it's benefiting them through their politically campaign, they do not show up to real hard decisions. And this is the same thing when it happens to youth. As one of the youth just posted on the chat, youth do not trust the police. You guys have to come up with better strategy. We gotta hear from them. We gotta hear from the mothers, from the communities that are being affected. We gotta not only hear from them, they have to sit on this table. And it shouldn't be based on culture or language barrier or skin color. So if anything you guys can take on tonight is to say that we are serious about getting an action. And if you wanna be part of it, I think there's a survey that Mark just put in. Please take the survey. Please contact also Soraya. Her email is already posted on the flyer. If you have any more questions to it, thank you for everybody who took part of it. Thank you for the Black Community Consultative Committee, members who are taking notes to take it back to the Toronto Police Services, collective group who put it together, Zero Louis, who also has been active all this time and saying, you know what, it's enough. We're exhausted, we're tired. And why is the community tired? Because nothing gets done. It's lip services, that's all it is. And whenever there's election or whenever there's issue, they just put it on the media. But the reality is it doesn't trickle down to the community, and many of the community is not even aware of it. They don't know and who it is to blame. We're not saying it's one person, but it's all. And it's time to call that out. Thank you guys. Soraya, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone who were sitting late night organizing this, exchanging ideas. Enough is enough. It takes all of us. I think other countries have done it. I think we could do it. All of us will take to make a change. When is there a trauma, there is ripple effect in the community, affect all of us. I think we could take action, and the people who are not on the table right now, we will call on them. We all have TDSP trustee in our area. We will make them accountable. We need to involve their elected representative. We need to call all of them. There is millions of dollars are pouring on TDSP system in the name of anti-Black racism. And where is those monies going? Is reaching our kids? Are we making any different? If it is not, we need to speak up. If we are not us making a change, who? If it is not now, who? I think we need to take it to the heart. And I want to thank all the moms who are sharing their stories. Yeah, it just break my heart and watching those videos. And we hear you, we see you, and we are here with you, okay? And we are together on this. We will find solution and we will stop this gun violence. And I want to thank everyone. And I think Mark, he posted the survey. Please take a minute to do the survey. And so we will continue to do whatever that necessary to overcome this challenge that we have. It will take all of us to make a change. And I will say the day of action is today, and let's move on, okay? From now on, all of us, we are responsible citizens to make a change. Thank you, and IHMS for providing us the technical support. Mark, Ines, Sarah, Hajja, my brother left, I think already. Peter, oh my God, I can't thank you enough how much you put on this, how much you advocating for Regent Park. I want to thank you. Thank you. Peter, thank you so much for joining us. I think 51 division, most of them are here. This is not only about 51 division, this is from all of us, the issues that exist throughout the city. And let's say enough is enough. We are not going to funeral anymore again. I think it will take all of us to say that. Tiffany, thank you for your courage to come up, to step in to answer question. And even though the TDSP are backed up, or I don't know the reason, one of the reasons they tell me nobody's available tonight. They have a board meeting, but they could spare one person to answer all of the question. And I want to say thank you, all of you guys, for organizing. Thank you. Sorry if I forget anybody, please forgive me. Thank you for everybody who put on this. And good night. Thank you, guys.
In a nutshell, to have meaningful impact in diverse communities, government officials must equitably serve, protect, expand, engage, innovate, research, and fairly provide services in excessively disadvantaged communities. Remember, diversity is natural and cannot be wiped out. Injustice and inequality always ignite violence, while humanity and justice often fix any political, economic, or social problems anywhere. Emphasizing to always support diverse community planning and implementation of comprehensive community safety plans, including preventions and interventions. Keep healthy and safe until next meeting. Assalamu alaikum.
IHMS.